Everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Inside the CCL, now sponsored by Oxygen Esports for season 2. You can see we have some fancy overlays and whatnot. A lot of excitement on Saturday, a lot of funny stuff going on. We don't have too much to talk about. This will not be a super long episode of Inside the CCL, even though there will be some popcorn. Hello, Lauber. Welcome. Congratulations on getting picked second overall in the draft. It's a pretty little spreadsheet for you guys, and I'm just going to talk about something that I constantly talk about, which is the approach to things that can happen in terms of these draft scenarios. And that is, the in-game roles are very important. It's always been long understood that at a very high level of play, you really need the out-of-game role. You need the drafter, you need the shot caller. Now, those roles can be distributed almost exactly like a tank, actually. Like the same way we've seen the tank role be distributed across multiple heroes in sort of the Justing, the Wild Heart style drafts. You can actually distribute the other roles to other people, right? Your tank doesn't have to be a shot caller, but your tank does have to have sort of active comms in order to call things that their job is to be paying attention to those things. And you do need someone who understands macro and calls rotations. Ideally, everyone on the team understands macro and less of that has to be called, but you do need that as a baseline, and it is very difficult. BBJ is well known. We'll get into BBJ's theory about shot calling in a second because it's relevant to their roster picks. But you need those roles. So I was very excited to see that the new orgs coming in not only prioritize that, but prioritize tanks, but prioritize people specifically who have the experience. Because as you can see, only 3 tanks needed to be picked up total, right? 3 off lanes, 5 support, 6 flexes, 5 ranged, and then 7 subs / 6 men. So an org looking at those numbers might be like, oh, we don't need to prioritize tank because as long as we're happy with the 3rd tank available, like the 3rd best tank in the pool, and there was Bad Benny, Lauber, Tremor, Caterpillar, and Collusion as a role swap, like those are 5 very experienced players. You'd be pretty happy to get the 3rd best tank, right? But 3 of those players also have a fair amount of experience at being the leader of a team and having that important leadership role in the context of a team. So that's really important. Same thing for offlane. You would think, oh, we don't need to prioritize our offlane, but offlane is actually incredibly important. Having the right mindset as an offlane player, I still to this day love the way Wubby designated it. Wubby always called offlaning macro support. Right? You're macroing so your team can do other stuff, the same way a healer heals you so that you can do stuff. And then 5 supports. Now, support is probably the most stacked role in terms of the available options, so even though you need 5 of them, I don't think they needed to be prioritized very highly unless you needed a specific roster, which we'll also get into, that also happened. And 6 flexes. Now, flexes are not common. Good flexes are fairly rare. There actually aren't that many people who play a wide variety of heroes at a top tier level. And the problem is that a lot of people think they do. A lot of people are like, I can play anything. And then you ask them to play like XYZ and they don't play it well, right? And they can play some heroes well. They can play more heroes well than a lot of people. So it makes them feel like they're, gods. But being able to actually play not only a large variety of heroes well, but heroes that specifically fit into drafts, competitive drafts in particular, in a specific way, is a fairly rare skill set. And it's always nice when you have a flex who not only has the ability to do that, but also has some really interesting additional picks, like Hasuabs playing Vikings, or the flexes who can play Rexar, right? So you can have the double offlane sort of style of comps, stuff like that. And even if they mechanically play some of those heroes well, they don't often have perfect decision making on like, well, what should I be doing as an offlane in a 1-3-1, or if I'm swapped to the offlane later on in the game. So it's actually more to it than just can I play the hero. It's can I play the role that I sometimes get put on as being that hero, right? And the way you play even like double support is not the same way you play solo support. So even if you were a god white main, for instance, you might not be able to play white main correctly in a double support comp. So 6 flexes to pick up, not necessarily a ton of good flexes in the pool, sort of an interesting problem. 5 ranged, won't talk about that too much. And then 7 subs / 6 men. I'll be curious to see if any other team actually uses their 6th man the way Oxygen does, or has been, either in a coaching or drafting role. But yeah, so we're gonna go through this. Onyx picked up Bad Benny as first pick. Obviously, one of the best tanks in EU HGC, arguably the second best vision control tank in EU HGC, and vision control is very important. Very smart player overall about the game. And Storm picks up Lauber. And again, so far, even though it's a low priority role in the sense that only 3 of them are going to get drafted. And then we see a little bit of a change up, right? This is actually super, super fascinating. So Fury goes away. He actually gets moved into the 6th man slot. And X-Ray gets picked for 30K, and BBJ gets traded to Storm. So there's not a lot to this story. BBJ and Lauber really get along. I almost think of BBJ and Lauber as the Bang brothers because they are just both very aggro players, right? And obviously their playstyles mesh extremely well. And from my understanding, they just really have fun playing together. So this was a trade that it's not like BBJ was surprised. My understanding is he knew it was coming. And Michael got a chance to pick up X-Ray as a tank. Now, 30K's problem was they did not necessarily have a dedicated shot caller. You guys are dirty-minded. I'm thinking of the Mighty Ducks 2. Remember in the Mighty Ducks 2 when there were the 2 bigger guys that were just like knocking everyone over? They're called enforcers. Anyone? Okay, anyway. The Bash brothers? I was also thinking of Mighty Ducks, yeah. Boomers together. Easy. Okay. 30K's problem, season 1, is they had a lot of really strong players, but they didn't necessarily have a dedicated shot caller, a strong voice in comms. And, say what you will about X-Ray, and I know a lot of people like to say things about X-Ray. He is very much a totalitarian leader. He has fun comms, where he's like saying, I stun, I poly, I go, I back. But he also has a very clear vision in the draft. He has a very clear vision of what he wants to pick. And he did try out as a tank in season 1, so it's not like he's an amazing role swap, right? So they've essentially immediately fixed this problem, right? They have a strong leader. Now, whether or not that's gonna work out for them, because there's always that question of team synergy, it is up in the air, right? We don't know. But the fact is that we have 1 less sub required, and X-Ray is put in that slot. So they've already sort of fixed. Now we have Onyx picking up Gotfilth as their flex. Gotfilth is a multiple-time GM number 1 in NA. He grinds the game a lot. He has a really strong hero pool, really decision-making overall. Has decent comms, right? So this is an incredibly good pickup. I'm not too surprised by this. I assume that Onyx, went to Bad Benny and they were like, hey, we are gonna pick you up first. And then Bad Benny started looking at who he played with, and Gotfilth is really up there. Didn't Fury kind of suplex in this? Yeah. Banana. So CM, Chili Mountain is running the same roster in Masters Clash with Banana. So even though, again, support is the deepest roster. Now Banana did win Best Support Season 1 for CCL, so obviously he's going to be a prio pick for any org. But Chili Mountain really needs to pick him up here. So again, even though we talked about earlier how supports have a very deep roster and you'd be pretty happy with the 4th or 5th best support available in the pool, you really do want to pick up Banana here in Chili Mountain's case so that you can get the exact same roster. So you can essentially practice for 2 tournaments at the same time. And not only that, they're going to be practicing in 2 different metas, which may actually give them a pretty significant competitive advantage if they can actually leverage it. So hopefully that works out. GG picks up Ultralisk. Now, this isn't too surprising. Granite Gaming probably going to go for a all EU roster like they try to do last time. And I think Ultralisk really needs to be on an all EU roster. Ultralisk's schedule is somewhat constrained, so he doesn't have massive schedule flexibility. Being on an all EU roster would actually be very good. Banana was welcome back in Oxygen. We were sad we had to drop him, but the scheduling was hard. And in fact, not Banana's fault. There's also other factors, but if you go look at Oxygen's losses last season, we were always the second game of the day. Our wins were first games, and we didn't lose every second game of the day. They were closer series every time, and Banana staying up 2 hours past his bedtime was a problem. Ultralisk is in high school, yes. So a lot of times when you see these decisions made in draft and you're like, why not this great player? It's like, well, it's probably a scheduling issue. Do you think it'll help CCL teams be able to scrim versus Master Clash teams? I don't see why CCL teams would scrim Master Clash teams. CCL is played on NA, Master Clash is played on EU. Ping is a thing that exists. It's not quality practice. Do I think it will help Chili Mountain specifically since they're participating in both? Yes, to some degree. Only if they can leverage the greater testing advantage, right? Because of the different metas. Meanwhile, Dino picked up for 30K. Not surprising. Again, Dino considered by a lot of people to be the best ranged in EU. All right, and 30K needs a ranged. 30K not shying away from having both an EU and an A roster. Whatever scheduling issues happen, they'll work them out. And yeah, Draded picked up for Oxygen. This one might be a little bit of a surprise. I want to emphasize that we did tryouts for everyone we picked up. We had multiple tryout blocks, tried out quite a few people actually, and Draded has just sort of come back to the game. He's only been replaying it for a couple months. For those of you who don't know who Draded is, he was the flex for Octalysis in HGC. That was Justing's team. Really good guy, really good attitude, and I'm gonna be honest, the first block we had with him was not great. First block we had with him, he was rusty. He was a little sloppy, he was a little quiet, but he had one or two good calls, and that was enough for us to call him back. And the second block was just not even the same player, right? And it was only a couple weeks difference between those two weeks, and he'd been grinding. Like he had come back into form. And honestly, he still has a little bit of rust to polish off to get back to his old level, but I think there's a reasonable chance that Draded actually is going to be competing for the top flex in CCL Season 2 if he puts the time in and gets that rust off. So I'm very happy to have picked up Draded. Draded kind of flew under the radar, I think, for some people. Maybe that's a misinterpretation of mine. Obviously, Wildheart knew who he was, but we weren't worried about Wildheart taking him away from us because we picked first. So we are very happy to have picked up Draded. And a lot of prep went into that decision. And he really gelled really nicely with the team as well. Where picked up for Wildheart. This is a return. I'm actually curious if Where is actually going to play this time, and they're going to swap Buds onto Flex. Possibly. I don't know. We'll see. Wildheart, you never really know, right? Wildheart, you never really know exactly what the plan overall is, because it feels like they don't pick up roles, right? Unaverted is a very good range player, but Funds was just this massive flex player who had a really weird hero pool, even for a flex. Justing plays tons of stuff. Some of them are tanks and some of them aren't. And he makes them tanks. Zergling's the only one who actually is the off lane. He's just an off laner. But Buds occasionally swaps to other things. We'll see him play Thrall from time to time. And their next pickup actually has played a pretty big variety of roles as well. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Not too surprising. Hosty picked up for Sim. Obviously, everyone saw this coming. There was a controversy that was there was a controversy that gave a little bit of an official warning. We were pretty confident about Wildheart. Actually, we had no fucking idea. Thank you. I appreciate that, Rob. For the record, I was pretty confident. I expected Bad Benny and Gotfilth to be picked up. I expected the Banana pick. I expected the Ultralist pick and the Dino pick and the Wary Day pick. So except for the trade, I was really confident in the draft. After round one, though, I was not sure. In fairness, I didn't really care after round one either, because it's like, okay, I got my flex. I'm happy with multiple support options. Let's go. I did hear the rumor about the BBJ trade. I heard a rumor about the BBJ trade, but I didn't know if it was real or not. I'll put it that way. I didn't know if it was real or not. There was a controversy with Hosty where the manager of Simplicity, Party Foul, was messaging other orgs and being, hey, Hosty really wants to play with the team, please don't pick Hosty. Now here's the thing, Hosty is an extremely good flex. It would have been totally reasonable. Even though Gotfilth, Ultralisk, and Draded are all very good flexes, even for Oxygen, it would have been reasonable for us to consider Hosty. It's kind of awkward. They were officially censured for it, and Simplicity ended up getting Hosty anyway. So nothing too much came of it, but it was a warning, and that's going to be relevant in a minute here. And then Uki picked up. I was a little bit surprised by this, personally. It's not that I don't think Uki is not a good offlaner. I do think he is. But I think Copen, who was the best EU HGC Open offlaner, right? So for almost a year and a half or something, Copen was the best offlaner that couldn't quite make it into HGC in EU, which is a pretty high level of competition. Dequaza obviously has already proved himself in Season 1 of CCL. Got a lot of respect for being one of the best offlaners in CCL, even though it didn't necessarily reflect in his team's results. So, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think there's probably a chance here that they were either valuing attitude more, or they really thought Uki was going to get picked up by someone else. Maybe they'd heard a rumor that someone else wanted him. There is a chance that they were like, okay, Uki has only been offlaning for a little while. He's already catching up very quickly to these two other players. We see his peak is potentially higher, so we're going to invest in him. But it's still weird. It's still weird. This is the one decision by Onyx that I was just like, huh? Like, every other decision Onyx makes, kind of, I understand, but this one I'm just like, huh? And yeah, I don't get it. IB Tings. Now, here's where we're going to talk about BBJ's theory of shot calling. BBJ's theory of shot calling. I'm of the opinion that everyone on the team needs to talk some of the time. Not necessarily all the time, but everyone on the team needs to talk some of the time. There's some thing that you see that everyone else hasn't, and you need to be able to say that thing, and it improves the performance of the team. Now, there may be games where that doesn't happen, right? BBJ is of the opinion that at most 3 people need to be talking, and if other people talk too much, it can cloud comms and actually be a bad thing. It's hard to say which one of us is right, since the best team in the world got to the point where they literally didn't talk unless it was to call out a kill target, because they already knew what everyone else was going to do and they didn't need to discuss it. That's a level of HOTS that one can only aspire to. But IB Tings not only doesn't talk, he literally doesn't own a mic, so he cannot talk. It's not like he doesn't talk much. He literally cannot talk at all. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting personally, and here's the thing I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the perspective streams, right? Whenever Storm is playing in this season, BBJ is streaming his perspective. I'm going to be on that stream listening to comms and being like, okay, did IB see something? Did it affect them? But IB Tings is an extremely good mechanical player. He grinds the game. Again, flexes need a certain level of like hero pool. They need to be able to play certain heroes. IB Tings fits that requirement like just fine. So it's really just, does the flex need comms? If the flex doesn't need comms at all, then this team is looking insane. And Lauer and BBJ are very talkative players. So he actually can't buy a mic. Apparently, it's not just that he doesn't own a mic, it's that wherever he lives, he can't talk. So we'll see how that works out. Who knows, maybe, I mean, I've played with IB Tings, like, I played with and against IB Tings several times now. I've never heard him say anything. So we'll see. Azurite, not much to say about this one. This is, again, the Chili Mountain roster from Masterclass. Playing CCL from the public library? Maybe. I don't know. Sco. Now, this is weird. This is where Granite Gaming's draft gets, like, weird, right? Because this is the player they dropped, right? And I think he's going to be tanking again. This is the player they dropped. And it's like, if you were going to drop, and they end up picking up 2 more players, so they could have protected 3 players. The only reason that this makes any kind of sense is if they thought they were going to be able to straight up build a better roster without their players. Now, they didn't perform great in season 1, right? So some people looked at their roster drop and being like, okay, they want to attempt a full rebuild because they don't have faith in their current roster. But then they picked up the exact same players, and at least 3 of the exact same players. So Granite Gaming continues to baffle and confuse me. I didn't know what they were going to do, but I didn't expect them to pick up Ultralisk and then pick up a bunch of the same players over again. Like, it's not what I expected. I expected the full rebuild. I expected, like, okay, we're gonna take a very different approach since we don't feel our season 1 approach was very good. Yasu picked up. Yasu, again, very high energy. Plays a variety of heroes, even some non-supports, but it's not going to be super relevant, I don't think. And we now have Liam as the lone NA player, just like Nintori was the lone NA player last season on his team. So 30K, a very different character, I'll say. Very different character of a team. Even though they only swapped out 2 players, they have a much more balanced roster. Heavy picked up for Oxygen. Again, we did a lot of variety of tryouts. We were very, very close between 2 support players. Heavy won out just by a little bit, primarily because it felt like he had better comms, and we thought he'd be the better Lily player. Is what it really comes down to. No, I don't really think that, but it was very, very close for our top support picks, and they were both up, so we really had to choose. We would have been happy to get either one of them, but they ended up being both up, so Heavy won by just a little bit. Mason Blaze picked up. Now Mason Blaze is. Ooh, I'm gonna type this in actually, so that we can maintain our color coding. Who was the loser? He wasn't a loser. Whether her team was involved in that loser, it's not a team. It's well, she's a part of an org, but I'll let her out herself if she wants to. Cav, please. Sorry, guys. One of the reasons people tell me things is I only repeat stuff I'm allowed to repeat. So Mason Blaze coming in. Now, Mason Blaze is essentially signed up as a ranged, and he's definitely going to be put into that flex spot. Obviously, everyone on Wildheart is a flex, so what's the difference? That was with actual Lily. Man, can you imagine if Lily, like in-game Lily, had an oxygen tattoo? Talk about advertising. But Mason Blaze has been around for a while. He is, again, he's that quintessential flex player. He's played a variety of roles. He has good comms. He has a really good awareness, I want to say, of the game. He has a really good awareness of what's going, like the game state, like in the game. He has a good awareness of what's going on the map. So the Oxygen Stream borders formatting is super clean. Thanks. Yeah, the Oxygen overlay is really nice. Did I make a power rankings? Oh god, you guys don't know me if you think I made a power rankings. Jesus, not a power rankings kind of guy. Anyone, the thing you have to understand is that any of these teams can beat any of these other teams, and they will in scrims. They're all good players. The things it's going to come down to are minute details, small mistakes, whether those mistakes are in draft. Now, at this level of play, casters and analysts like myself who are trying to be entertaining will be like, oh man, that was a huge mistake. And really, it's actually a pretty small mistake. But for the purposes of the level of play, it's a huge mistake, right? If winning or losing is a 3% difference and you see a 1% mistake, you're like, that's a huge mistake. But in the grand scheme of things, it was a pretty small mistake, which is why it's very difficult to have very high standards for your play, right? Because it's easy to forgive yourself for a 1% mistake. It's easy to forgive yourself for like, missed a storm bolt. It's not that big a deal, right? But at the same time, you'd be like, I can't miss that storm bolt. Not at this level of play. Nope. How many hours will Sim pour into the game this time? I mean, that's up to them. Definitely, it seems like everyone has hit the ground running a little bit better with their scrim schedules. And okay, so here's where we get. So I Sim steamrolled everyone last season if there are small differences between teams. Sim was 6th, so they didn't really steamroll everyone. They played exceptionally well in the playoffs, which is a slightly different thing. You sound like you're describing the field goal kicker in U.S. football. Am I? So now we have the hostages, and everyone was joking about the hostages. We'll put funds down there. Everyone was joking about hostages being taken, right? And as it turns out, there was actually some collusion, unfortunately. And we do have an official statement from Heroes CCL. And it turns out that Simplicity and Onyx colluded to coordinate Simplicity's pick in the 18th spot in order to set up a future trade for a player on the Onyx roster. Now, who outed this event? And the answer is like literally everyone. People were going into Twitch chats with like Lutano was going into Twitch chat. I believe he was in BBJ's Twitch chat. People were talking about it publicly. They didn't think it was against the rules. Right? Because obviously if you think something is against the rules, you're not going to go into multiple Twitch streams and be like, this is so funny, this is so spicy, we're so clever. That's just not what you're going to do. You're going to sit down, shut up, and hope you get away with it. But CCL determined that it did meet the definition of collusion and affected the competitive integrity of the league. I didn't think it was against the rules till yesterday. Exactly, right? It's a question of like, what's the difference between picking someone up hoping for a trade and picking someone up knowing you're going to get a trade, right? Those are subtly different things. But I think when you're colluding with another org and the trade is not above board, it's a little different. Now, the funny thing, the weird, like the stupid thing to some degree is they could have just traded slots, right? Simplicity simply could have traded Onyx for their pick, right? And then they could have like traded another slot further up or something to make it so this would have been totally fine. This feels like something that they sort of brought on themselves by not thinking through their overall actions. Well, I mean, they could have gotten some other benefit, right? They could have, for instance, gotten scrim priority. You know, it's pretty good when you're talking about the team that won first place, scrim priority. You know, there's other things they could have traded for, not necessarily directly in the draft rules. You know, you could be making friends. Yeah, Udall gets all his trades. I don't know how Udall gets all his trades. So there are going to be some consequences for this nonsense. Onyx and Simplicity will be unable to trade or acquire another player on their rosters until the Monday after CCL Week 4, so it's Monday, May 24th. Could it have been an exchange and leaving Hosty open for Sim? I mean, they could have said that, but I don't think anyone was picking Hosty knowing that it was essentially a dead pick for anyone but Simplicity. Both organizations will forfeit one of their remaining draft transactions. The draft transaction previously authorized between Simplicity and Onyx will stand, so this is a trade that already happened. As the sanction impacts players who may wish to depart a roster to seek other opportunities, both Onyx and Simplicity will be permitted to drop a maximum of one player from their roster during the sanction period to release them to the waiver wire. If Simplicity or Onyx chooses to drop one player during the sanction period, the organization may not sign a new player to their roster, so there's no subs. It's kind of an important deal. Until the sanction period is passed, it must maintain a minimum roster of 5 eligible players. If the organization fails to maintain a roster of 5 eligible players, further penalties may be issued by CCL administration. The organization's player stipends will be prorated to pay for 5 players on their roster until they are permitted to select a 6th. Either organization cannot field 5 players for their scheduled match for that week. They will not be permitted to select or appoint a substitute player. The organization will have the option to play with a bot player or forfeit their match, be assigned a 3-0 loss for that week. I would hate to have that part happen. I don't want to see bots playing in CCL, ideally. That's not my goal. Even though it did happen in HGC once or twice, it was always because of a disconnect and it wasn't right from the 0-minute mark. Both organizations will be fined from their end-of-season sponsor revenue share. The funds will be returned to the Hero CCL budget for use towards league-related operation costs. Onyx will be fined $500 from the revenue share, and again, as we talked about at the beginning of the stream, because this is Simplicity's second infraction of the draft receiving, Simplicity will be fined $1,000 from the revenue share. Simplicity received a verbal warning from CCL administration on March 30th, and Party Foul issued the statement about the incident. So it was all fun and games until we discovered it was against the rules to have fun and games. So some funds became a hostage. And Storm tried to respond, right? Storm was like, well, we really wanted funds. Can we pick up collusion as a hostage? Now, bear in mind, Storm still needs arranged, right? They still need arranged in an off lane. So they're taking a hostage because they were going to pick funds there. And we talked about it already, but I feel like, I don't know. I really feel like why is this even happening? Like, why didn't Storm, if Storm wanted to deny funds to Onyx, why didn't they just pick funds there, right? So Storm is picking collusion because they want to trade it for funds, but it's like, we acted not recognizing there was collusion. I still think you guys could have picked funds here. So the new sim wanted collusions, we wanted funds. It becomes a thing. Onyx picks up Copen. So, and this just sort of derailed the entire draft at this point. Right, so Onyx picks up Copen thinking that Storm wants Copen, I assume, but there's 2 really strong offlaners in the pool. So this is not the power move that Onyx thinks it is, unfortunately. Because, who's going to be sad about getting Dayquaza? Seriously, who's going to be sad about getting Dayquaza? CM does something sensible and picks up Cattle. Now, Cattle was on the fence about playing, but he was like, if I don't sign up, the decision has already been taken for me. So he signed up with the question in his mind of, am I going to be playing or not? If I'm not going to be playing, then I can back out. And if I am going to be playing, then, maybe I can be on a team that wants to play a little bit less to match my level of investment. And instead he gets picked up as a 6. Now, 6 is kind of a perfect placement for someone like Cattle to be in. If Chili Mountain can make it fun for him, Cattle would actually be an excellent coach. He has a ton of experience with the game, and could definitely bring a lot of help and insight to this roster to sort of bring them up. Particularly Gia. Gia is obviously a very good player, but role swapping to Tank. Tank is one of the harder roles in the game to learn everything about, and Caterpillar could definitely help there. So this is a really smart pickup from Chili Mountain. And now we get back to the Clown Fiesta, which is picking up a player you already dropped and being like, we dropped them, but now we want them back. Valimar was our second pick, by the way, for support. Very close between Valimar and Heavy. Onyx does pick up Valimar, so I'm super excited that Valimar got in, by the way. And then Storm is like, oh, you tried to steal our offlaner? Well, we're just gonna pick Dayquaza. Is amazing, and I don't understand why this was a threat. Oh, God. And then Granite Gaming picking up Ty as they're ranged. And then Storm picks up CPX. Obviously, everyone knows this is a very controversial choice. I know Lauber has said publicly that he really likes playing with CPX. He likes his energy, I think is the way he put it. Obviously, CPX had a bunch of controversy surrounding him in Season 1. We'll see if that continues into Season 2. Hopefully it does not. I will say that CPX is a grinder. He's someone who's willing to put a lot of work in. So I can understand from that perspective, if you're thinking just about the game, someone wanting to pick him up. Onyx picks up Jay. Now, if Onyx actually wants Jay or not is really unclear to me at this point. Jay is another player that we tried out. I really liked Jay. So we'll see. We'll see how Jay does. And then Fancy Pants picked up essentially as a sub for Granite Gaming. Fancy Pants actually a pretty good sub considering he can sort of fill in multiple roles, not necessarily to an insane level. And then Henning. So Henning, Swamp, and Sko back on the team. It's just Ultralisk and Ty that are the changes. And then Jay was traded, and Collusion is currently on the waiver wire. This Collusion has been dropped from Storm. Teams will have a chance to pick him up if they would like to. And that's where we're at currently for the draft. Now, remember that Onyx and Simplicity have no trades, right? So the hostage has been freed. Hostage has been let go, and he's... Why was Collusion dropped from Storm? Because Storm would only pick Collusion in order to trade him for funds. And as soon as they realized that, they weren't going to get funds, they dropped him, right? When you kidnap someone and they won't pay the ransom, you either shoot the hostage or let him go. Like, those are your only options. So thankfully Storm took the high road and didn't shoot the hostage. In this case, shooting the hostage would have been keeping him on the bench all season and putting him in a position where he just simply couldn't play. And resisting the temptation to clip that advice. Yeah, and that was the draft. That was the draft. That was the drama. I think there were better DPS options than available in CPX at the time. You also have to consider scheduling though. I assume orgs did scheduling talks. They did, friends things. It's important that people want to be playing together. It's very difficult in HOTS to be on a team where you're like, I don't want to be playing with this person. It's very difficult. So Storm will be allowed to pick up a 5th as a sub, presumably. What do you think about Queppy not being here? We actually tried Queppy out, and comms are always going to be a thing, right? Queppy also is, I'm not going to say he's very aggressive, but I'm going to say he's Korean aggressive. For anyone who's never played on Korean ladder, Koreans are very aggressive. It's insane. You guys think diving behind buildings is something, it's like, oh, this is so cool. Diving behind buildings is something that happens every Korean game I play on. I play on Korean ladder. They're aggressive. So without comms, coordinating that kind of aggression is basically impossible. So Queppy would have to fundamentally change his entire playstyle, which I think is a big ask. We did discuss it with Serenic, yes. Do you feel it should have been drafted, didn't get picked? I hate the should have been, right? I hate the should have been. There's always cases like last season. If you asked me who would put the most time in and didn't get picked, it would have been Gia. Gia did eventually end up picking up, but it's not enough. It's not enough to put the time in. It's not enough to be good. You have to do more than that. You have to work on other skills. You have to sell yourself. And the people who did that, you have to make friends. You have to make people want to play with you. You should be, and there's some cases where I think people got picked up that aren't going to be very good competitive players. I just don't think they will be. I think they're very good ladder players, but I think competitive is sometimes a little bit different in the way you have to move around the map, the way you have to position in fights to not get punished. And it was true last season as well. And some of those players didn't do very well, right? Azerite is considered an Orphea one-trick, or was considered an Orphea one-trick last season, and every game he played on Orphea, he lost. The way he plays Orphea on ladder is not a way of playing Orphea that works in competitive. I'm not really surprised at any players that were not picked, right? I definitely think Tremor is still waiting for his day in the sun. Tremor's a very good tank player. Bad Benny and Lauber are both better, as is Caterpillar. Tremor's currently a better pick than Sko, but GG wanted an all-EU roster, so that automatically makes Tremor off the table. Kelsier is a very good range player, but is he better than... Kelsier's better than CPX, sure. Actually, he's probably better than Azerite and Ty, too. But again, relationships. I really wanted Gallen to get drafted in a Cascon-like role. It's not too late for that, right? Because there's still... what is the benefit of the 6th man, right? You always got to ask yourself. For a lot of teams, it's just a sub. And if they think Galne can potentially slot in like Cascon and actually help with drafting, what made you pick Draded? The thing that made me pick Draded was, and I already talked about this a little bit, but I'll go over it again because I like talking about my team. Draded, we had 2 tryouts. One of them, he didn't perform very well, and it was obvious that he was really rusty. and he had another tryout 2 weeks later where he was a god. And it's like he shook off the rust, right? He was grinding more. He's only been back into the game for a couple months. So the fact that he could bring himself back up to a certain level that quickly and, you know, have very, very active comms is incredible to me. He plays a really big variety of heroes. Back in HGC, he was one of the only players that would actually win on some heroes. The heroes that I thought were really good, and no one played them. And if they did play them, they lost. But Draded would be like, I'm not going to say which heroes because it's going to reveal one of the reasons we drafted him. But there are heroes that Draded is very good at that are, in my opinion, underrated. I got you, Dyson Sphere. Draded Probius income. Yes, that's the hero, guys. It's Probius. How does Draded hero pools compare to Priz? Actually, again, you know how Wildheart is all flexes? Octalysis was all flexes. There wasn't exactly overlap. They did play different heroes, but like sometimes Draded would play Medivh, and sometimes Priz would play Medivh, and it just depended on the draft. Are you not afraid you have a weaker team than in Season 1? I am definitely not afraid that I have a weaker team than in Season 1. The synergy that's developed between Robot, Nasmus, and Madara, the quality of Cascon's drafting, and also just Madara. Like, Madara was a gamble. I believed he could improve, but obviously I didn't know for a fact that he could improve. But now he has either the best or second best Hanzo play in CCL, statistically. You know, by my criteria of what makes a good competitive Hanzo player, of course. I actually don't know about win rates. I could check win rates, I think. Extremely strong Hanzo player. And he wasn't that, right? Now he is. So in Season 1, I had 2 experienced players with competitive, 2 inexperienced players with competitive, and 1 who had mixed experience and was playing on ping. Now I have 5 people who all have competitive experience to some degree. None of them are playing on ping, and one of them is like proving that he deserves to stay on the team. Oxygen went 4-0. What's the criteria for best Hanzo? I determine good Hanzo play by how many W's you hit. For the most part, it's just how many W's you hit. W's you hit. I don't like to use total damage done in games because it's going to be strongly influenced by which ult you go in several cases. But even discounting the games where Madara goes Dragon Strike instead of Dragon's Arrow, he's actually pumping more damage than Unaverted. Unaverted's peak is currently higher. Like, the best Hanzo game played this season, I think, was actually played by last season was played by Unaverted. But Madara's average performance is currently higher than Unaverted's, but they're very close, right? That's why I said top 2, arguably top 1. Right? Unaverted and Madara are, in my mind, fighting it out for first place on who's the best Hanzo in CCL, and no one else is even close. So, but that's a hard hero, right? The fact that Madara proved to me that he can be that level of player is extremely important to me going into Season 2, whereas in Season 1 it was a gamble. Picking him up was a gamble. As long as he was the other one in the discussion, I got you, Legacy. I got you. But yeah, I don't like doing power rankings. I'm gonna end with a positive statement that I personally am super excited for all these rosters. I'm excited for the Bad Benny roster. Valimar, Gottfeld, Bad Benny, Uki is just insane. Funds is going to add a really interesting flair to that with the way his hero pool works. I'm excited for Lauer, BBJ, Ivy Tings, like that. Oof, like that's a game. That's a roster where I'm going to be like, ooh, can we have more comms? Like, do we need more comms? Like, BBJ has the ultimate opportunity to prove his theory of comms in competitive HOTS. Yes, Priz is full-time ERBS now. Yes. CM has the same roster as their Masterclass team, which means they get, double the practice essentially, if you want to think of it that way. I'm a little worried about Granite Gaming's roster because it's 3 of the same people. Ultralisk is an amazing player, but I don't know. 30K has a much better direction this time. Oxygen, obviously, I'm happy with my roster. Why is Storm 6 empty? Because Collusion was put on the waiver wire. He has been dropped from the team. Wildheart has another player who's going to buy into their madness, I think, easy. And Simplicity is literally the same team. But I'm super excited. I think just having Bad Benny in the tank pool alone is going to raise the level of everyone's tank play because they're going to get real tired of being constantly outplayed, especially around vision control. I don't think... So Chili Mountain last season was the worst team, right? By and away, Chili Mountain Chili Mountain last season was the worst team. I don't think Granite Gaming is as bad as Chili Mountain, so the average quality of teams is definitely up from last season. Is the peak, and since the team that won first place is the exact same roster with just a different sixth man, right? I think the peak and the average the peak has to be at minimum the same, and if the average has gone up, then CCL Season 2 is going to be much more competitive overall than Season 1, and that's something that I personally am very much looking forward to. That's going to be it for Inside the CCL Episode 1 of Season 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for all the subs. Thank you for all the support. I kind of thought this would be a short episode, to be honest. But, you know, it's just like going over the draft and talking about a few things. Not much to do. But it ended up being, there was insane drama, as it turned out. So here we are. Remember, this is the stream where we never lose, we always win, or we learn something. Learning is always a win. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all next time. Oh my god. I didn't transform the outro. Let's try that again. Wait. This is the problem I had with, there we go.